Hello and welcome to From the Be All End, the Burnley podcast. Well, I've just recycled last week's script because I think last week I said 24 hours after, is it feeling any better? A Burnley defeat. Burnley, of course, falling to a 3-2 defeat at home to Fulham. A real kind of gut punch, that one for us. To get into it in a bit more depth than the lads did last night on the Rapid, which was a brilliant listen, I have to say, and plenty of you seem to have agreed, given all the engagement. Simon Evans has handed me the microphone so he can offer some more forthright opinions on yesterday's game. He's joined by Chris Boden and a very welcome return for Tony Dawber. Again, very popular Tony amongst the commenters on YouTube the last time he appeared. So evening, gents. Thanks for joining us. Let's get into Fulham, which is something we didn't really do yesterday, isn't it? Really, that's where Scott Parker's going wrong. We just need to get into him. Tony, I mean, we've obviously been chatting in our WhatsApp group about how disappointed we are, and you were quite glum when I joined the call, and it doesn't get any better, does it? The more you watch it, the more you think about it, the more you look at the way other teams are picking up points around us.
Yeah, I mean, from the start yesterday, a bit like Palace, but probably worse than Palace. I think I go in the cricket field stand, and there was like a downbeat atmosphere at the beginning. There was no chance at the beginning. There wasn't a roar pretty much when we came out. It picked up a bit after the goal for 5-10 minutes, but it was a bit unconvincing. There's a real downbeat feeling about the club, isn't there, which is not working in Scott Parker's favour at all. There's a general downbeat feel about the club, and he's, I just thought, well, this is the one. Fulham, they haven't beat us since God knows when. I couldn't remember us beating them. All different. Yeah, and they're the sort of side where you think, a cold Saturday night on turf, are they the ones they're the sort of team we can turn over. But we didn't. I mean, you joked about it just then, but we didn't get into them, did we really? And this has been the mantra since. I mean, I think very much myself and a few people echoed it last night when we were coming off the ground. I think that equaliser for West Ham, people talk about turning points. That equaliser for West Ham just before half-time, hopes were still pretty high then, weren't we? The confidence had still not gone. And I've backed Parker in that I think he was right to be cautious in the games against the big guns, and when we had that tough start, I think he was right to do that. And we didn't get hammered. Even at City, it was only 3-1 till the last few minutes. So I don't think we got hammered in any game, really. So he was right to be cautious. But the time was to start picking up. We won at Wolves. West Ham was a big one because we went 1-0 up. We were playing really well 30 minutes, 40 minutes. I wouldn't say we were in control, but we were the better side. And then gave away that. I think somebody mentioned last night where we conceded 3 goals to West Ham and they were all from a yard out, pretty much, and that puts a question mark against defending. Now, since West Ham, it's kind of the confidence has evaporated and the tightness has evaporated, and the key for a club like us in the Premier League is having a solid defence, and especially that triangle, the keeper and 2 defenders, Ben Mee, Tarkowski and Heaton behind him, or Nick Pope behind him. We haven't really got that at the moment, and it crumbles from there.
And Simon, I mean, you mentioned the fact that, on US TV, the only thing you could hear was the ironic cheers when every time Trezor touched the ball in the last 10 minutes. I mean, me and Chris, and Tony were on there, and I said to Peter, who I go on, I said, I've never known it as flat, and everything was flat. It wasn't just the microphones were next to the Fulham fans for US TV and the World Feed. It was flat, and it becomes a bit of an egg and chicken, doesn't it, in terms of whose responsibility is it to get the other going? You might say, well, it's the fans' responsibility, but 6 defeats in 6 going into that 7th game, it's kind of the onus you think is on the players, is it, Simon? Or do we have that responsibility? Because I think Alan Pace is really clear that, real fans will support the team and won't leave early and things like that. Who's the responsibility for getting the ground going?
Well, I think the fans do have a responsibility. I think, in an ideal world, your fans are there to get behind the team in good times and bad, yeah? And they need lifting and every manager will say, that's when we need you most and so on. And it is. But the problem here is, like, we've been through it so many times before. I think that's, the feeling I have, and I'm not on the turf like you lads are, but I would imagine emotionally it's a similar thing wherever you're watching Burnley games from, which is, we're going down again. It feels like, we've gone up and we've not been quite good enough and we've not got things right. And there's been little moments where we've suggested we might be competitive enough. But, the crowd was behind, the Burnley team all the time through those Dyche years until the final season, really. Because there was something to believe in. There was something that you could hang on to and go, there's no way Stephen Ward is jogging back, like letting Harry Wilson run through and score the goal. He's never was. And Stephen Ward might not be on paper as an exciting signing as Hartman, but he wouldn't have done. And I think there's something about this team again, and because we've had the same thing with Company, where it's really, really difficult to get that sort of belief and sort of say, this is a team that, I'm going to back these lads all the way because they're 100%ers. They're going to graft, and they're not. Cullen yesterday, I think Woody said this on the pod yesterday, but Cullen yesterday felt like the only player out there who was behaving like a Dyche era player. I don't know, we get pelters for comparing it to everything to Dyche all the time, but that was the standard we set at this football club for staying in the Premier League. And there was only one player living up to that standard yesterday, and that's really sad. So, yes, it is the fans' responsibility, in my opinion. It'd be great if Turf Moor was a fortress, but there's just so many things going wrong at the football club that contribute to that not being the case.
Simon, do you think that it would have made a difference last night if Edwards would have started? I mean, I know we're not dealing with the bit larger problems that we've got at the club, but if Edwards would have been in the starting lineup last night, would it have made a difference to the atmosphere, do you think?
I was surprised he didn't. I was really surprised he didn't, because there was a sort of, I don't know, it felt like he's thrown everything out there that he's wanted to try. He's brought Breuer in when he, maybe Fleming deserved his place, but let's try Breuer, let's try this, we'll drop Hartman and play Perez at Newcastle. We're trying different things. And the one thing he's not trying is the only thing really that from the bench has looked like providing some sort of spark, which is Edwards. I mean, I don't know whether he just, if he doesn't feel he does in anywhere near enough work and he's carrying him, but yesterday you look at it and you think, it sort of was crying out for him, wasn't it, really? So I think it would have been, I think the crowd, that might have sparked the crowd. Do you?
I do.
Yeah, I think people were, I was in Hatter's Bar before the game and I was whipping everybody up with the Tresurrections happening and, the excitement people felt with somebody of either Trezor or Edwards starting rather than playing a striker who's not good enough for this division on the right wing when you've got, how many wingers? We had 4 wingers on the bench yesterday. He started with a striker who is not good enough for this division, not good enough for the Championship. The feeling in that pub, it's a very busy pub, was he's got to go with Edwards, surely. JBL on the left, he's got to go with Edwards, because we know Anthony and JBL can't play together because they both want to play on the left, right? So your other options are Chowner, which hasn't worked, Trezor, which we knew was never really going to happen, despite the real disappointments at 4:15 when the teams came out and he was only on the bench. The biggest disappointment was the fact that Edwards, having come on against Newcastle, almost set that winner up, the equaliser up. His little cameo against Palace, you were kind of thinking to yourself, right, this is the time to, you've got Axel Tuanzebe right back yesterday, which is very defensive, man. He's not getting forward. So you can allow someone like Edwards, whose perhaps work rate's not going to, contribute, I think. And Parker kind of went, we'll go with Lau because he likes running about a bit. And Chris, I think that's the wider issue, isn't it? It's kind of, Simon's right, we do have a responsibility as fans. But when it's as flat as it was at kickoff, even before we're just seconds away from kickoff, make some noise for Burnley, which irritates the hell out of me. It felt flat because of the lineup, didn't it?
There's times when the fans need the team to kickstart it, and there's times when vice versa. It's different, but it's the sheer inevitability of it all, like Simon's referring to. That we're scarcely 10 minutes into the game, and we've given away a goal that my lad plays for Paddy and under sevens. If they'd have gifted that sort of goal away, you'd have been absolutely livid. It was pathetic. It's lazy, it's embarrassing, and those sort of goals at a professional level, you just shouldn't be given away. It's just a joke, to be honest. So already, say the game's not 10 minutes old, and the crowd are like, "Well, we're not going to score two. We're not going to win the game." It's all flat, and then like I say, it picks up. We have the chance for Ugachukwu that Leno, credit the goalkeeper. He's out ever so quick.
It's a good save.
But then we get the other chance, and it's easy as pie as well. They work it into Cullen, and Cullen just slip. It's not like a devastating. Like you look at Anthony Gordon's ball last week for the sending off for Elanga. He's fed it on a play. You could drive a bus through the Fulham defence, but albeit it's a glorious finish, and you're thinking, right, come on, here we go, let's step it up. But we're soft, we're lazy, we're. Like say you go back. I was reading the chart before the game, and Burnley in the Premier League we have the least amount of occasions where we've won the ball high up the pitch. We're not pressing. We're not getting in teams' faces. We give away ludicrous goals, and we are everyone's favourite team to play against at the moment. Even Wolves, to their credit, have given Arsenal. They give Arsenal a run
against
yesterday.
Arsenal. Yeah,
they had a crack for they're just not good enough, but they had a crack against Man United in the week. We're just bloody rolling over at present, and I'll say I'm not a Parker in, Parker out type character, but unless it's on him ultimately. If the results continue in this vein and he does nothing to counter that, and I look at the fixture list and I struggle to see where the next point's coming from, the next win, then ultimately the axe will fall. But he's got to.
Can I just introduce the cliche, Chris? Do you think he's lost the dressing room?
I don't think that, but we saw the effort at Newcastle. So how do you go from that sort of all lads together effort at Newcastle to that shambles last night? Someone on Twitter pointed out the situation at QPR last year when we were already up, we're hammering QPR away from home, and they're like a bloody swarm of mosquitoes all over QPR, snuffing out a counter attack because we don't want to give away lose our clean sheet. Well, where's that mentality gone? Because that last night, it should be. Say if they're going out on the sword, fantastic. But that, like I say, like Redknapp picked up on the. I looked at the third goal last night, and I saw Broyer in the corner with Sanderberg, and I'm thinking, if you can't nick it off him, commit a tactical foul, take the booking, stop the attack at source. They've got pace on the counter, and then you watch Hartman, who's he's not even jogging, is he? He's bloody walking. No. That for me, he shouldn't see the bloody starting 11 for the remainder of the season. Perez is a simple, slot straight back in next week.
Yeah, there's a chance I think for Fulham after that where I was shouting at the TV this morning where Hartman again he's jogging. He's basically letting his man.
Is that the one where Bassey who's.
Yeah, Bassey absolutely spanked it.
He's a
wide, didn't he?
Decent. He's been at Rangers, he's been at Ajax, he's had a decent career, but he's basically taking the Michael out of us. He's played his way out, couple of given goals, and we've got Fulham centre half making us look like bloody amateurs.
Yeah.
And then he's got excited at the end, but that would have been the the real bloody top to top it off. That was embarrassing.
Yeah. Let's look at that second goal, Tony. That for me is the most infuriating because, we clear the corner well enough, but then we allow a ball to be dinked in, and there's three central defenders, and not a single one of them jumps. You've got Estev, you've got Ekdal, you've got Tuanzebe. There's a bit of height there, and not a single one of them jumps in the 6-yard box. Now, a
Yeah, it's 3
goalkeeper
on.
I play with on a Sunday morning, who also might do a bit of commentary for Burnley Football Club, reckons goalkeepers in the 6-yard box have no excuse if a goal's scored from inside the 6-yard box, because they should be commanding, they should be taking everybody. We've somehow managed to get as goalkeeper, plus I think Hartman's in there,
There's
plus
5
the
on 1.
3, yeah,
5 on 1.
and he's somehow managed to get it. How do you coach those mistakes out of players, Tony? Is that just a lack of desire to want to get there before the person attacking the ball? Is it a lapse in concentration? Is it leaving it to somebody else? That's a big problem for Parker if we're conceding goals like that, isn't it?
Yeah, well, this is why I mentioned that cliche about losing the dressing room. With Hartman, he started the first. My son's not liked him from the beginning. He said he's lightweight and he's out of position a lot. But he did start off looking okay and as though he might improve. But, what has changed? The fact that he looks disinterested now. And one or two other players looked a bit disinterested as well, didn't they? Florentino seemed to fade really badly, didn't he? He was wandering around lost and that, But I agree, that second goal, when it came in and there were, I could see 3 Burnley players. I was at the other end of the field, but you could see 3 Burnley players. He didn't even have to jump to nod it in. Now, I've just thought back. I know we mentioned Dyche before, but I thought back to the times when we got 1-0 up against the likes of Everton or somebody, a reasonably well-established side, Premier League side under the Dyche era. You weren't really worried. There might be 15, 20 crosses coming in that last half hour, and you'd just be thinking, I wonder who's going to end this one clear, Ben Mee or Tarkowski. We'll be all right. You weren't really worried. But now,
Exactly.
I'm thinking, if a cross comes into the mixer, even if it's just that looping cross to the far post, we can't defend that. And I'm at a loss to understand this coaching motivation, maybe a change of players, and a change of the defensive lineup as well. It's a combination of them, but there's just no security, and that transmits to the rest of the team. It transmits to the keeper. Doesn't know, who's going to clear it and stuff. It's just, as Chris said, it's head-shakingly bad, isn't it? It's bad.
Yeah.
So,
And Simon,
if Ekdal had managed to get... Ekdal he played like his head was made of a 50p last night. It's coming off in all angles.
Yeah,
So if he'd have got his 50p...
I mean, he gave the corner away at Newcastle, didn't he? As well, from again misjudging that flight of that ball. Simon, does this feel a little bit like the Everton Boxing Day fixture, where apparently afterwards the players all got together and went, right, we've got to stop pissing about now. We've got to get back to basics. So, and it's a similar situation to what we're in. I'm not suggesting that offers any hope, but it really feels like the basics, forget about trying to be world beaters and forget about, the level of player that we've bought. It's about basic stuff, isn't it? It's tracking your man. It's all of those kind of Dyche cliches. Sean Dyche has Nottingham Forest to beat Spurs 3-0 today. So let's not, we get pelters for talking about, referring back to Dyche, but he's won at Liverpool. He's beat Spurs today. Forest are clear already. Forest won't get relegated, right? So that's sorted. He's sorted that mess out. It feels like it's basics rather than, it's not about, it doesn't even come down to quality, does it? It comes down to just doing your job. The simple things in your job.
Yeah, but quality affects that, doesn't it? And when it starts going wrong, then it starts going wrong across the board. I mean, Maxime Esteve has not become a bad defender. He's doing 4 people's job in that back 4. I mean, he's a left-sided centre-half, and he's got bloody Hartman jogging around to his left. So how is he able to focus for 90 minutes on just doing his job when he's got a left-back who goes AWOL like that? I mean, that back 4, I mean, you're absolutely right, and we shouldn't apologise for the Dyche era references, because that was the standard, and we know that was good enough, and we know that players like Tarkowski and like me and like Keane were good enough. They were good enough. They would head stuff away and clear stuff away and block and make challenges all day. And the players we're playing now aren't good enough in those positions. They aren't. I mean, Ekdal was fine in the Championship, has never convinced in the Premier League. Tuanzebe's been, on and off injured for most of his career. Hartman, makes you feel like Stan Ternent, doesn't he? He basically deserves the Mark Winstanley treatment now, and that's it. Like, never see him again. Thanks, Jamie Redknapp, for making the broader point there. But, I'm looking at it now and I'm thinking, yeah, you do go back to basics. And Josh Cullen was saying in his interview they have to look in the mirror, and he looked really angry actually yesterday, did Josh Cullen, in that interview, didn't he?
Surprised. Mm.
And I'm thinking, if I'm Josh Cullen, I'm going up to Parker and saying, get Joe Worrell in there. He knows how to defend.
Yeah.
He knows how to defend. He's not fast enough. He might not be Premier League level. Well, we heard that about lots of players, didn't we? Plenty of people, including lots of Burnley fans, were saying Josh Brownhill weren't good enough for Premier League level. What we would do for a Josh Brownhill in that midfield now, you know? We've thrown away at this football club lots of players who were Premier League level and let them leave for next to nothing. And we haven't replaced them with players who've got that basic ability to just grind out a draw away from home or get a 1-0 win at home to Fulham. And this lot aren't good enough. I mean, we'll get on to why we're in that position, I'm sure, later. But, you know, it's not Scott Parker's fault that they're letting in goals like that. That is not a coaching issue. That's individual players not being able to do the job required.
One player who was asked to do a job, one player who we hadn't seen for 500 odd days in a Burnley League shirt, Mike Trezor. Defensive midfield, Tony? Is that his new position? I mean, he was asked to do a job, and somebody rather cheekily suggested at Football this morning that he threw him on in the, let's call it the Josh Laurent position, because he knew Parker would get pelters if he brought Josh on. I mean, he's a funny character, isn't he? And we don't know what's gone on. But there was something there. First half, I saw him warming up just down near where you sit in the cricket field. And he's pointing. You know, he's at least trying to, you know, almost like the Worrell stroke Barnes thing. He's pointing where there's space and things. And, you know, he comes on. But were you surprised to see him trot straight into a kind of defensive shield position?
Yes, I was, because, I mean, I think everybody knows he's unlocking defence. He can play that little ball through and unlock defences. I went to Reading, was it like last year when it was freezing cold in the Cup? And I thought, I wish I hadn't come here. I hope they don't equalise. Not because I was that bothered about it, but I just didn't want to stand for another half an hour on half-empty ground. And then he did. And then he came on, and within about 2 minutes of him coming on, he looked like he was knackered. He was like standing with his hand on his hips, you know, like we used to do in five-a-side and stuff, and bending over. And I thought, what's going on here? And then in the next few minutes, he played 2 little dinks and made 2 goals. And I don't know, you can say it's only Reading, but he did make a difference then, and he's clearly fit now. Otherwise, he wouldn't be on the bench. Surely he's 100% fit now. Otherwise, he wouldn't be, you know, he wouldn't have featured. So why doesn't he just give him free rein? Give him free rein to go forward and maybe do something, unlock a defence. Florentino tried a ball through beginning of the second half, and I thought at last, but it went straight to a Fulham player. Terrible. I've never seen so many misplaced passes by us. And then there was that one. I think it led to one of the goals, actually, when Foster blasted that crossfield ball. And I thought, it's a raking crossfield ball. And it went out of play towards the long side, and it was 15, 20 yards away from the nearest Burnley player. And I'm just staggered, and I thought, well, maybe Parker's thinking, throw him on and put him in that position, just behind Brozier maybe, and see if he can unlock a little ball through for Fleming maybe to run on, because Fleming is good at doing stuff like that, those little runs. I think Fleming's got a good footballing brain. He reminds me of Goodmanson in many ways, in that, he's reliable. When Fleming gets the ball, there's not going to be a mess, probably, don't you? He's going to do something, he's going to do something intelligent with it. I think he's an intelligent footballer. But I am at a loss, Andrew, as you said, I'm at a loss to understand why he played him so far back. When he showed a couple of nice little touches, he didn't really feature. It was like a bit of a novelty sideshow, weren't it, really? But I don't know.
It was. Yeah. Yeah.
But there was a quote,
Chris,
wasn't there? Well, there was a quote during the week where Scott Parker was speaking to Matt in the press conference, where he's basically saying that, I mean, he's had issues with the club. I think that's sort of like, behind the scenes, that's been believed. There's been some medical issue or other. He's not been too amused with things, and Scott Parker basically made it sound that he'd not really been overly interested in appearing, and now he is. And now we're seeing him. He's on the bench at Newcastle. He comes on last night. He looks more Oh, so you looked at him a couple of years in the Premier League, and he'd like legs like they were thin as anything, weren't they? He looks a bit more of a physical specimen, but he's gifted. He's got a football brain. He's technical, and you just seen the little touch. I thought, I mean, whether Parker said to him, "Go on and just drop in there," or whether he was just saying he's going looking for the ball just to try and influence things. He popped up on the left wing when Anthony comes inside. He pops up as a 10. He does pop up alongside Cullen, etc. But he's going looking for the ball and trying to get on the ball and get us ticking over. He knows he's got Edwards, who's a similar mindset further forward. But what have we got to lose now? But that all stunk last night of just Scott Parker I've run out of options. I've run out of ideas. Let's just this is we talk about last throws of the dice with his team selection at Newcastle. That was a last throw of the dice, surely last night.
Yeah. It did have a feeling. The game that I thought of, Simon, was the final game at Wembley, England versus Germany. It had a bit of a feel of Kevin Keegan walking into the dressing room at half-time. I'm not saying Scott Parker did this, but the substitutions and the team we ended up with on the pitch felt a little bit like, I've run out of ideas, lads. Literally kind of like, I would usually go to Josh Laurent, but I can't really do that just in case there's mutiny in the stands. Let's move on to Scott Parker. We'll come on to recruitment in a second, and we'll come on to ALK. Scott Parker, the feeling I got when I was kind of stuck in the bottleneck, thanks Russell, as I was coming off the ground yesterday was, it's not Parker's fault, and we'll perhaps roll recruitment into this section, but at some point...
We have to.
Yeah, at some point, you've got to do something to change. What's that old Einstein quote of madness is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result? It feels like whatever Scott Parker does, so he's doing stuff different, it's just not going to work for him. Have you shifted your focus from Parker being the man to Parker being not the man? Or are you, as was discussed on the pod last night, have the conversations, you've got to be having the conversations, but actually who else comes in?
I've gone backwards and forwards in my head over this, since yesterday, really, and over the last couple of weeks, as people have been talking about it. Because at first I just thought it was ridiculous to be talking about getting rid of Scott Parker. Some people were coming out with that after the West Ham game. But, yesterday does make you think, doesn't it? It does focus your mind on the issue. And I've gone backwards and forwards over it. And ultimately, well, let's say this about Scott Parker for starters, right? He's not a bad football manager. I think he knows what he's doing. I think he knows how to set a team up. I think he showed that last season. In very difficult circumstances. Let's never, ever forget how he was undermined at the end of the transfer window and that ludicrous situation we found ourselves in at Sunderland and how he had to piece it all back together again. And he did. And it was a bit boring and it was a bit cautious. And he does have that reputation of being a bit cautious. Our problem at the moment is not about being cautious. The problem at the moment has got nothing to do with how he's setting up or the tactics. The problem at the moment is that the players aren't good enough, in my opinion. But you look at Scott Parker, and yes, he's a decent man. He cares a lot. I mean, he said he was heartbroken by some of the abuse he was getting at the end of the game. And I don't think it's necessarily about himself. I think it's about the situation he finds himself in with the players and the club. And he's a decent man. He wants the best for the club. And I think he deserves the kind of support that I saw Manchester United fans giving Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, Jose Mourinho, and even Ten Hag, where they knew where the problem was at their football club, and they weren't going to take the easy option of picking on an easy scapegoat as the manager. Manchester United fans knew the rot at their club came from the Glazers and what was going on at that football club, and they made that really clear, and they got behind the manager almost to spite the Glazers to a ridiculous degree, where it was clear that They never even turned against Ralph Rangnick, who was a disaster for them. They stuck behind their manager and their players because they said the problem at this football club is at the top and in the ownership. And I would be far happier if Burnley fans were a little bit clearer about who's responsible for this constant yo-yoing and the collapse of standards at the club. And I don't think that's anything to do with Scott Parker. So I'm not going to come on here and say Scott Parker should be sacked. You know, we'll discuss if he gets sacked. We'll discuss who the options are and all the rest of it. I don't think so. I think he needs back in January to give himself a chance to do what he was hired to do.
Chris, I mean, Simon is pretty kind of unequivocal. You know, ALK, I think we've discussed it, you know, privately and discussed it on this podcast many times. I mean, are you surprised that kind of 5 years into the ALK investment nearly, and the ALK kind of experiment, that ALK and the chairman still get an easy ride? And that is to quote somebody in our comments on YouTube, but increasingly the comments that I'm hearing, you know, it goes beyond, you know, Alan's a nice guy, he's in the fan zone shaking hands, he'll chat to me in Tesco and all that shite. It does go down to the simple fundamentals of how to run a football club, doesn't it? Which is back your manager and give him half a chance. Is this the result of non-football people? I'm going to sound like I'm being a real arsehole here. Non-football people playing at being football people. You know, we have praised Alan Pace in terms of some of the decisions he's made, bringing Parker in rather than going for another, you know, second sexiest girl in Burnley or whatever he was going to go for. We have praised him backing his managers in terms of to the tune of, you know, tens of millions of pounds, and we won't talk about where that money comes from, but there does seem to be this kind of fundamental problem that at the end of the last transfer window, we have been lumbered with players who we'll probably all sit there and go, Scott Parker's not handed that list to Alan Pace at the start of the window, has he?
Well, I say, well, Simon, to go back, I mean, Simon references the Glazers. Now, there's your obvious comparison. Although Rangnick, he didn't have a great time in terms of results, but he identified the rot within the club, and United have never sort of looked to assess that. But the one thing we have in common with United, it was a leveraged buyout. A leveraged buyout is now against the rules. So it's never sat right with me for day one, basically. And I've saw people sort of, you know, you could say, I was, good grief, what did I do? 18 months at the Burnley Express before leaving into the ALK's raid, and people have said, like, sort of comments that I'd made at the time that you know, it was bitter because we didn't have certain access, and you know, chairman might not speak to us when we wanted to speak to him, etc., etc. So be it. Yeah, you know, Mike Garlick wasn't the easiest fella to get hold of. John B was, and so on and so forth. You know, Frank Teasdale. He can go on and on and on, but it's we don't know. I mean, we can make a guess at certain acquisitions on the playing side. Are they data signings? Are they Scott Parker signings? Truth is, we don't really know. Is our data, is our analysis as good as other clubs? You'd suggest not. You'd suggest that, I mean, Sunderland's has been absolutely sensational, but Sunderland have had this perfect storm, getting promoted 20 odd points adrift of us, you know, scraping away to a playoff win where they were second best against Coventry in the playoff semi-final, and then they get to a final and manage to edge that. But they've not been in the Premier League, and the PSR side of things, they've been able to spend more than ourselves and Leeds United have. Whether Burnley and Leeds United could or you know or wanted to, you know, that's just the way it is. So it's how much money have this group got? Have they got the ambition and the funds and the foresight to drive us forward and keep us in the league? The record would suggest we're struggling. I don't believe the gap is that wide in the Premier League for promoted sides. You look at it this season, like Liverpool below par. United haven't been as bad in the last 40 years. Chelsea are not the team they were 10, 15, 20 years ago. Manchester City are getting back, but they're still not the threat they were, a few years ago. But Arsenal are having a very good season. Villa are having a very good season. But I look overall at the Premier League and I think we could stay up here. We could reel a West Ham in. We could in days gone by, we could reel a Fulham in. We could reel a Bournemouth in. We could, because we were horrible to play against and uncomfortable to play against. And we're not, because we tried to branch out from this old British, Irish, Scandinavian thing. And fans, we want to see sexy football, sexy footballers. We love seeing all this. We've got a League of Nations, haven't we? But the DNA has evolved and changed. And like I said, we're soft to play against. But so again, like the data, the data won't tell you a player's character. That's when you need your extra, your contacts. You need.
They all get the same data, Chris.
Yeah,
exactly. It's not the data that's the problem. It's what are they looking for when they look at that data? What kind of players, what profile of players are they looking at?
Yeah, I mean, Tony, we know you're a big fan of quizzes. I'm not going to ask you to name them all, but do you know how many debutants there have been since ALK came into Burnley?
5 years ago.
5 years ago. How many debutants in 5 years?
Was it something like 62 or something like that?
62. Look at that. Get him on Mastermind again. Clive Myrie will give you a bit of an easier ride, Tony, I reckon. But I mean,
he will, yeah.
62 debutants suggests that either, 62 debutants would suggest one of two things. One, the model is fantastic and we're bringing these players in and we're only having them for 6 months and we're turning them into massive fortunes and there's coffers are being swelled. Or 62 debutants tells you that every single transfer window, you're trying to reinvent who you are and what you are, and you're trying to, it's almost like news corporations trying to beat the Google algorithm, isn't it? This cannot go on. I mean, a lot of people have said to me, oh, let's get back down to Championship so we could win it again. At some point, that elastic band's going to snap, isn't it?
I think you made a good point there, Andrew, in that we're trying different tactics. I agree with some of Simon's points about ALK. We're trying different tactics. I mean, under Dice, we had that grinding, and that was obviously, it was pre-ALK, that infamous summer when we signed, was it Dale Stevens and Will Norris? And then we had the steadiness, and then we had this scattergun from Company. And I'm just looking at yesterday's sort of the defence, the back four and keeper, and there's only one. I mean, you look at the records that we broke last year. I mean, that was incredible. That not conceding more than one goal in 46 games. That's incredible. And as Simon rightly pointed out, Parker did a great job. But I looked at the majority, the back five for the majority of last season, including the keeper, was Trafford, Roberts, Esteve, Egan Riley, Pires mostly with Humphreys in a few games, I think. I looked at yesterday's back four, and there's only Esteve is the only one still there. So you've got to think, well, if there's been such a big turnover, then are they an improvement? Well, are they an improvement? And he's been a bit unlucky with Roberts being injured and with his 2 suspensions yesterday as well. But when you look, Hartman, Twanzebe, are they an upgrade on the ones we had last year? Even Egan Riley.
Despite his poor form, despite Walker's poor last 2 or 3 games.
Yeah. My point is, we do seem to be, the recruitment is flawed. I think Simon's made it. I think Simon's correcting that the we don't seem to have settled on a recruitment policy. We've tried different tactics, but the recruitment, but it's been flawed every time. We do, there isn't a consistency of policy. And the policy we adapted over the summer is wrong because there's 2 key areas of the team for me, which is the keeper and the 2 central defenders. We haven't recruited on that because Estef's not really. We've tried Ekdal, we've tried Twanzebe, they've come up short. We've got a glaring hole there, and the other place where we've got a glaring hole. And I must admit, we're not the only Premier League team like this, but up front, we've nothing up front really, have we? So there's 2 key areas there to the side where ALK. I think you're right. I don't think that's Parker's wanted sheet. When he's I don't think he's wish list. He's passed the wish list to ALK to get. I think it is the backroom boys the data analysts who are signing these players. But the way we're doing it at the moment, there's 2 gaping holes in vital areas of the team which we haven't fulfilled. So there's a massive question mark against our recruitment policy now, and it's becoming more evident by the game, I'm afraid.
Yeah, definitely. A couple more ALK related stats. This is going to be one that the ALK bots on various message rooms aren't going to like, but there we go. Since ALK took control of the club, we've played 58 Premier League games at Turf Moor. We've won 10 of those 58 games. In the Premier League prior to the takeover, we'd won 46 in 121, which is a massive job. And we have a goal difference of minus 16 in the 121 games prior to the takeover, and a goal difference of minus 45 in the 58 games since. I mean, Simon, that tells its own story, doesn't it? That again, different times, and we know the gap's got bigger, but we're just not giving ourselves a chance of staying up with that huge drop off in wins at home. And everyone knows promoted clubs and lesser teams get Premier League survival based on home form, don't they? By and large.
Yeah, and this is where I do put myself in Scott Parker's position, and you think what he's not done is ever come out and thrown the players under the bus. As soon as he even mentioned halfway through a sentence that we might not be good enough, but we're going to fight and battle to the end and all that, it was clipped up and used as he knows he can't come out and criticise the players, because it starts to look like he has lost the dressing room then, doesn't it? But he also can't criticise the recruitment or the ownership or the investment that he's had. And he's had that experience from Bournemouth, hasn't he? Where he did that after they got beat 9-0 by Liverpool and said, well, this is the squad I've been left with, what can I do, sort of thing, in a game like that at Anfield. And he gets sacked for it. So he's not going to come out. It's a career suicide for him to come out and say, I didn't ask Alan Pace for this lot of players. You think I asked him for Hartman? You think I asked him for Breuer or Chouani? He's not going to come out and say that, because he's out the door within 24 hours if he does that. So that's why he's got his hands tied behind his back in every interview he does, I think. I'm not wanting to put words into his mouth or anything, but I think he's got his hands tied behind his back. He can't come out and say what the problem is at the club. He can't. And the recruitment, those numbers that you've just given, that 62 players and that level of turnover, okay, the yo-yo status feeds into that, doesn't it? Because players want to leave. But, some of the players we've signed, we're forgetting them. They pop up every now and then. You hear that somebody's played or scored in some Bundesliga game somewhere. Oh, yeah. Al-Dakil used to play for us. Huntonji scored a goal. And Zeki Hamdouni's still at the club. Anis Delcroix's going to the World Cup. I mean, this list just goes on and on of these players that we've signed.
Yeah, Aaron Ramsey, yeah.
Sambo, yeah. Regular, isn't it? Sambo's a regular. In the Dutch top flight.
And there's all these players floating around, and we just haven't been able to go out and find the key positions that we needed, exactly what Tony identified. And we said 100 times on this podcast during the summer, need a centre-half, and we need a centre-forward. And we didn't go and do that. We didn't get the players. And at the end, we panic-signed Breuer, it feels like. And so the recruitment's been an absolute disaster. I think, if you were to come in, look, ALK aren't going anywhere, so there's no point of saying sack ALK. You can't sack ALK. And if they were the way they've structured the club without going into the whole debt and everything, the only people who are ever going to buy this football club from ALK are another bunch of private equity Americans, right? So we're in that situation. So you look at it and you think, well, what do we need to sort this out? And, by all accounts, there's a lot of consultants running around that football club. And I think what they actually need is not consultants now. They need a director of football who knows the game, who can take charge of recruitment, who can put the data people in their place and say, your job is to bring me a spreadsheet of options. I'm the one who decides what the options are. I'm going to tell you what to look for. I want a strong centre half. I want a goal-scoring striker, etc., who takes control of that whole process, who works with the first-team coach, as I think Scott Parker is officially known, isn't he, or head coach? They need a director of football. They need somebody coming in now who can work with Parker, who can take charge of the mess that is the football side of the club.
Yeah, and Chris, I mean, we've kind of talked about it. Which you've identified will win you the championship or get you closer in the championship, and then expecting either the coach to be good enough to coach them up to Premier League level, because none of these players really have ever played Premier League football to the extent that you know they're good enough, or you're expecting the player to suddenly just be good enough to go from the championship to the Premier League, and we know that gap's getting bigger. In the meantime, that takes away from your overall summer budget. I think you mentioned before we came on air, we did spend 40 million quid on the likes of Fleming and Humphreys. And this is where I kind of forget all the other players we had on loan and turned into buy. But we spent a lot of money on those players, didn't we, to get them in for the championship, just in the hope that they're
Marcus Edwards was one of those.
Marcus Edwards, yeah, of course he was. Marcus Edwards was one.
I think Anthony?
Jaden Anthony was the other one as well, yeah. Now, at the start of the season, you kind of go, well, Anthony looks like he's found his feet and he has played Premier League football. Humphreys we've not seen because he's injured. Fleming was injured at the start of the season as probably the biggest success story of the lot, given his goals. But you've got a player in Marcus Edwards who, yeah, he's left out, but you've got a player in Marcus Edwards who's only just got a kick, and even then it's, bit part. It feels like the wrong way of recruiting for the Premier League, even if it's the right way of recruiting for the Championship, doesn't it?
Well, we wind the clock back 2 years ago, and we get promoted with Ian Matson and Nathan Teller and Taylor Harwood-Bellis, and we bring none of the three in, and suffered as a result, I think, if it's fair to say. I think we'd have loved to have seen Nathan Teller carry on in a Burnley shirt. I think we'd have given our right arm to sign Ian Matson, and Matson's struggled for game time since then. Really, Harwood-Bellis had a sniff of it in one of the all-time worst Premier League teams. So we still don't know if THB's up to sketch at this level. But so we didn't do it 2 years ago. We've done it 2 years ago, and as you say, you're almost starting. People comparing our summer spends with Leeds and Sunderland. You can say if you take that 40 million off that we were obliged to spend for deals that we secured, in the previous August or January with Edwards, it's a long way down on what Sunderland have spent. Or the Lefay was part of the Sunderland spend. But I look at Preston, and Preston have gone. They're pushing they've been mid-table. They've got a proper manager in Heckingbottom. He's gone in and made some really astute loan signings. The kid from Everton, who, if Preston are to get promoted, and they've every chance this season, I think they might finish. Certainly be hoping for top six. But if they are to be promoted, the likelihood is they'll not be able to sign Armstrong. The lad Divine, there were a couple of others in there. So which way, we all talk about, that you need to be really canny in the Championship and play the loan market really well because, funds are at a premium for most clubs at that level. But so you can't really win, can you?
Just to pick it up on that, what you mentioned about Preston, just a word of warning, Chris, to show, we have a go at ALK, but I'm just looking at a tweet from Kieran Maguire today. 2 days ago, so it would have been late Friday. The bonkers finance of Championship football highlighted, and he's got some documents showing it. by the Hemmings family putting 4.9 million into the club via new shares since September to allow the bills to be paid. You know, that shows what we're up against, doesn't it? You know, we have a go at Parker and ALK. It's difficult, whatever road we take in it. We're up against it. We're battling the tide, really, aren't we?
And without rubbing it in as well.
And football is on a knife edge, isn't it?
Yeah, well, they're the ones. I mean, like, even Blackpool have beaten Northend to the Premier League. I mean, no, not meaning to rub it in, but if they'd have had a season at that level, then it changes. It can change your fortunes, can't it? They've not had that, so.
Yeah. Is it the Spud Bros?
Let's leave it
factor?
there. Yeah, I think the less said about the Spud Bros, the better. Seeing some of the kind of stuff on what's it, £5 for a jacket potato. I don't know if that's a good deal or not these days. It's certainly a hell of a lot cheaper on the kind of flat iron at Preston when I used to work and in Winkley Square. But
and another word of warning, Andrew. They've got a Christmas single out as well, Spud Bros.
I believe so.
Just to put the tin hat on it.
God, that is all we need. Christ.
It is a charity record.
We hope you're listening to this.
I'll give them the due. It's a charity record.
It is, yeah.
We hope if you're listening to this on your run, it's helped push you that little bit further before you start indulging in all the plum or duff pudding or whatever Stan called it all them years ago after a performance at Barnsley. Plum duff, whatever that is. Still never worked out what that is. A bit of a bumper episode today for your morning run or dog walk. So the dog's getting a bigger exercise and you're getting a bigger exercise. Just call it some kind of like public service that we're doing here. I'm sure we'll all mull in our heads as you will over the next kind of 6 days until we go down to Bournemouth. I mean, fair play to anyone making that trip to Bournemouth a week before Christmas or a couple of days before Christmas. We'll be back later in the week with a preview of that episode. We'll obviously be back sooner than that should something happen, and we're not suggesting it.
Emergency pod, anticipation warning.
Emergency pod, yeah, emergency pod. I mean, we are on notice, I think, possibly on notice for an emergency pod at some point. We hope we're not having to reconvene before we usually do on a Thursday evening, but if we do, we'll get something out to you as quickly as possible. But until we see you again, enjoy your week despite the result, and up the Clarets.